nurses, I am back with another video. I know that it's been a while. Nursing school has kind of swallowed me in and overtaken my life, but I am back with another video. I finally have a minute to make a video. Today I just want to kind of give you guys an update, an insight on how my nursing school journey is going for me. Some more tips and my advice slash my opinion slash unpopular opinion about my college of nursing that has been going around, that'll hopefully give you guys some answers to your questions. So let's get started. Take 3. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about are my grades and my performance in nursing school. At my college of nursing, a 75 is considered passing. Anything below a 75 is considered failing. So as of now, I am passing all of my classes. I have at least an 84 in all of my classes, which I would say I am proud of myself. The thing that I want to work on now is all of my tests, my grades are between like 81s and like 87s maybe. And what I'm really shooting for is to make an A on my test, which I finally did make my first A. I'm proud of myself. I made my first A, but I have failed one test. And I realized that I failed because I just didn't study as in depth as I should have. The test itself honestly was not that hard. It was just very specific. And if you didn't read and know this stuff as in detail, you were in trouble. And they're pretty much so in my test grades. So I take 4 classes. On Tuesdays, I take basic concepts. That's where I finally got my first A. In basic concepts, we basically learn like the reasoning behind why nurses do what they do, I guess you can say. We learn stuff like the nursing process and how to take care of just like the basic necessities, patient safety, taking care of wounds and things like that. That class, I would not say that it's hard, but I would say that some of the stuff just isn't quite common sense. Like they'll ask you a question, for instance, and you will think that it's one answer, but in reality it's another answer. So I feel like I would say that that's a class that you have to study for. You don't want to sleep on that class because I know a lot of my friends, to them it comes naturally, but for me it doesn't. I'm one of those people where I have to read the book. I have to read it. I have to know it because I can't make educated guesses like some of my friends do. My next class is practicum on Wednesday. We have finally made it to the hospital, and that's basically where we pick a patient and we go to the hospital, and for that day we work alongside a nurse or a PCA and just basically help take care of the patients. I've only been to the hospital once. My group kind of got a late start. But I would say that my first experience in the hospital, I learned a lot. It was definitely eye-opening. I definitely was nervous when I first started, but I became more confident throughout the day. I learned how to do vital signs. Like in nursing school, they teach us the traditional way to do vital signs. Like you count the pulse while watching the time. You do the blood pressure with the blood pressure cuff. But at the hospital, they actually have a machine that like basically does everything. The only thing that you have to do is to put the little thermometer in their mouth to take their temperature and count their respirations. But I learned how to use a vital signs machine. I pretty much learned where everything was on the hospital floor. I did a lot, I would say. I worked with the PCA and not the nurse. And one thing I would say is I learned that the nurses pretty much were just there to administer the medicine. If there was anything else the patient wanted, like if they needed water or if they needed to take a bath, if they needed their diaper change, if they needed help to the restroom, pretty much all of that was on the PCA. And that came to a bit of shock to me. I don't know, I just thought that as a nurse, we were responsible for all these things. You know, the doctor is there to diagnose the patient, but the nurse is there to take care of the patient. But in a way, it pretty much was the PCA taking care of the nurse, and the nurse just administered medicine to make sure the patient didn't have any pain or anything. But that's one thing I would say about that. My next class is health assessment. Health assessment is where I have failed a test. So basically in health assessment, what we do is we learn about the different body systems and how a nurse would do a checkup or like assess these different body systems. So not only do you have to know like the different type of tests that a nurse would perform, let's say we're doing an assessment of the eyes, you would have to know which test the nurse would perform to test for eye vision, to test for peripheral vision. You have to know the anatomy of the eye. So if you don't pay attention to any of your classes for your prerequisites, I would definitely say pay attention to anatomy and physiology. It comes and it helps you in health assessment. It helps you in patho. Having a broad and a deep understanding from your A&P really helps. So yeah, and also with our health assessment, we have a lab portion. So not only do we take our test on the computer, but after that we will go in the lab and we perform in front of our teachers. We have our groups of 4. We'll perform in front of our teachers an assessment on the various systems that we're going over. Most of the time it's like 4 systems that we're going over in class, and each person will perform a certain assessment on our patient to show the teacher that our group has an understanding of this, and we get a group grade for it. I personally, the first time we had this, was so nervous. Like I was shaking. It was just really nervous for me because just performing in front of a teacher, yeah, it was just something that was really new and different for me. So I was definitely really nervous. That's pretty much it for health assessment. For patho, you're learning the patho and physiology of the body. So basically in anatomy, you're learning how the body is supposed to work and how it's supposed to function. But in patho, we're looking at what happens if the body doesn't work like that. So knowing your anatomy, physiology, and knowing how a certain system is supposed to work can help you to understand what is going wrong in patho. So like I said before, I am passing all of my classes. I have 1A, and that's in my clinical class, the one where I go to the hospital, and B's in the rest of the class. When it comes to studying tips, I personally don't have a set way that I study. I feel like each test that I take, I study kind of differently. Like I have different techniques and stuff. But one thing that I would say is pretty much consistent through each time that I study is I always take practice questions. There have been a couple of tests where I haven't read the chapters. I just had a great understanding to where I didn't have to read the chapters. But I want to say that was only for like 1 or 2 tests. For the most part, I do read the chapters. So reading and really comprehending, and I also have to make sure that when I'm reading, I'm understanding what I'm reading, and I'm not just reading to say that I did it. You have to actually understand what you're reading. Okay, to wrap up my grades and how my performance is going, what I will say is that we go to class and we have our lectures, and I feel like I've said this before, but we go to class and we have our lectures, and the teacher is only going to touch on, or she's only going to teach on what we have time to teach for. So we can be going over a system and a teacher might only get to like the first few sections of the chapter, but the last part of the chapter she won't go over. Us as nursing students, we are still responsible for knowing the other parts that she didn't go over. And the parts that they do go over, they don't always cover everything that we need to know. They might give you like a broad understanding, or if anything, they might tell us everything that's not even important, that's not even on the test. So yeah, we're going to lecture, but when you really learn is when you come home and you're reading and you're understanding this stuff for yourself. That's really what matters. I know in the beginning it was kind of discouraging because in high school and in the prerequisites, the teacher went over in class what would be on the test. You only learn stuff that would be on the test. But in nursing school, you literally have to read the whole chapter. You have to know everything and have an understanding of it, because you never know what's going to be on the test. Unlike with our prerequisites in high school where you only went over what was on the test, in nursing school, everything is fair game. You have to go over everything and prepare yourself. And even if the teacher doesn't go over it, make sure that you know it for yourself. Okay, so this last topic. My opinion or my advice for my College of Nursing. I know that lately there have been, I wouldn't even say a couple, like a couple handfuls of people inquiring and wondering Is PV's nursing school really as bad or really as hard as people say it is? I'm here to give my unpopular opinion, my advice on the program that pertains to me. I definitely feel as though the nursing school is as hard as people make it seem at Prairie View. And that's as expected. You wouldn't want a nurse that just went through an easy program and breezed through without any challenges, because most likely they're not going to know everything that they need to know. What I would say makes it hard is going to class isn't hard. That's the easy part. Going to class, showing up, that's the easy part. What gets hard is, I would say, the tests and the quizzes. I feel like I can't stress this enough. Like, whenever you're reading the chapters in the book, they're going to tell you verbatim like what is going on. But whenever you go to like take your tests and you take your quizzes, it goes deeper than just that basic outline or format that's in the book. They're going to take what you read, take what you read, and they're going to put it in a scenario. So let's say that we were learning about a patient who just had a stroke. They would take that, what you're just learning about stroke, they would take stroke, apply it to a patient, and basically ask you like, what would the nurse expect to see in a patient who has had a stroke? There are numerous symptoms that you can see in a patient who's had a stroke, who's had a seizure, anything. And sometimes, most of the time, it's not always going to be the most obvious answer, like, ooh, drooping of the face or anything like that. It's going to be something that's much deeper and complicated that you have to think about. It might not even be something that you learn in the book, but it's something that you can put together and apply from the book. So I would say that the nursing program, it is hard. Don't expect to come in and not work hard. You're going to earn your grade. Anything that you get, anything that you make on the test is basically what you worked for, what you earned. I wouldn't look at going to class as your only source of studying. That's just going to give you an introduction to what you need to go home and study. That brings me to my next point. I know that in like my first video after I started nursing school, one of my #1 tips was to pre-read. Everything works differently for everybody. And for me specifically, for this semester, I would say that I have stopped pre-reading. I don't really read before class anymore unless I have an assignment. And that's just how my brain works, because I can read before class, but by the time it's time for me to take the test, I don't remember the material. So what works best for me is to read like 2 to 3 days before the actual test. Usually each week we only have 1 test. This past week I had 2 tests, so I didn't really get to relax as much as I wanted to. After that first test, I had to start reading for this next test. But yeah, the pre-reading just wasn't working for me. Maybe next semester that'll be something that can help me. Okay, and to wrap up this video, what I feel is most challenging for everybody, or that's making everybody say that Prairie View's nursing school is hard, is the fact that most of your learning, your experience, it's on you. Like I keep saying and I keep pointing out, you can't rely on your lecture or your time going to class to be your studying. Nursing school is what you make it. It's your own personal experience. So if all you want to do is go to class and take notes and then be ready and then go take your test, it's not going to work. I feel like that's where the hard and the frustrating part comes in, because we already spend 3 to 4 hours a day in class, but that's not all you need to know. There is far more of what you need to know. So actually coming home and reading like 8 chapters that there might be on the test and teaching yourself and making sure that you actually know all the material is where the hard and the challenging part comes. And one last thing that I would say is, I also think it gets frustrating because anytime that we as a class do bad on the test, it's always looked at or pointed at that we need to do something different, that we're the reason that we're not succeeding, which is also true. But I also feel like our faculty and our staff and our teachers also play a role in that. I feel like if the vast majority isn't doing well on the test, then I feel like some changes need to be made at the source. And the source, I feel like, are our faculty, because they're here to guide us in the right direction and tell us where to go. So I can definitely see why there would be some discouragement. Some people saying that it's hard, some people saying that it's challenging, which it is. I'm not gonna sit here and lie to you and tell you that it's not, but I would say that it's definitely doable. It's been done before. You can do it. As long as it's something that you want, something that you can work for, you can do it. Like, it can be done. It's okay, guys, that is all I have for my video today. Please continue to send me DMs on Twitter, however you guys reach out to me. I am here to answer any questions. I love to answer questions. I am here. Okay, guys, see you in my next video.